If you've ever felt like you're losing motivation, it's probably because you're chasing too big of a goal. And if you've ever struggled to get people to help you, it's probably because you're trying to fit them into a perfect picture inside your head. In this clip, I explain why big goals kill dopamine and why leadership is about learning how to get more out of the people you know, not get new people. What I'm hearing inside of that is leadership and dopamine. All right, so dopamine first. Yes, anytime you start obsessing about the bigger and bigger wins and you start forgetting about the smaller wins, you start to lose track of your dopamine. The reason why is very simple. If you've never played a concert in front of 50,000 people and your goal is to play a concert in front of 50,000 people, and your brain decides that the only time you're going to get a hit of dopamine is when you walk on stage in front of 50,000 people, then you're not going to get very much dopamine in your life. Right? Because you don't do that. Right? And so if you make the metric for your dopamine something that is impossible, then you will lose motivation. But if you make the metric for your dopamine something that is possible, then you will have motivation. Because you will be able to hit the goal and you will be able to get a mental kick from it, and then you will be able to continue. What you said about getting bored of the small wins is a big deal, but what that usually comes from is we start to overinflate the importance of the big wins in our lives so that the small stuff starts to feel like less and less, and then it starts to become boring as a result of that. And so small wins don't become boring in and of themselves. They become boring in perspective with other wins. They become boring in comparison to other bigger accomplishments. And so if you obsess about the big accomplishments and you constantly compare yourself to those big accomplishments and what you should be doing there, then you're going to underweight the small steps. And if you do that, you won't get dopamine from them. And if you don't get dopamine from them, you'll be sad and you'll do less. And so I don't want you to be sad and I don't want you to do less. I want you to be happy and I want you to do more. And so this is a matter of, if your brain is starting to get bored of these small wins, then you need to start asking yourself, how can I make the small wins more interesting instead of how do I do bigger and bigger things? And so as opposed to how do I switch from how do I record this one take in the studio and that's my small win versus how do I play in front of 60,000 people, you move from how do I record this one small take in the studio to how do I record this one small take with somebody else and celebrate it together? Or how do I record this one small take in combination with this other one small take? And how do I make good combined sounds, right? It's like you just ratchet it up by a tiny bit. Specifically, you ratchet it up by the amount that is within your skill set. That's how you increase the wins. The other piece, though, leadership, it's a really big deal. The primary difference I see between successful business owners and people who move the world and people who don't is their ability to work through other humans. And the top objection I hear from new entrepreneurs and artists and other people who are trying to do bigger things in the world is they go, well, I got my first hire and I gave them a set of instructions and they didn't follow the instructions right. And so I can't deal with employees. I can't do that. I have to do it myself. I have to do it myself is the most common sentence that I actually hear in terms of humans who are trying to expand. I am super guilty of it myself. I have a weekly newsletter. I have over 1,000 written scripts. And for the longest of times, I thought my assistant couldn't compile a couple of my scripts into a structure inside of this newsletter to send it effectively. And she would make it I'd come up with the idea for us to have a weekly newsletter, and I'd be like, yeah, like go ahead and make that, and I'll look it over. And I'd look it over, and I wouldn't like it. And then I would go, oh, well, I guess we shouldn't do this. Because I don't have the bandwidth to go over this right now, and it requires me to go over it, blah, 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 blah. And then a week later, a month later, I do it again. She is a very intelligent person. There is no way she can't do this. But I have to show her how. If it's my vision, I have to show her how I want it to be done. And if she didn't do it the way I like it, it means I didn't show her how effectively enough. It's not the employee, it's the training. And so I had to get to a point where I was like, okay, it's ridiculous that I'm not sending this thing out. Of course, I need to have a weekly newsletter. This is just basic. Let's do it. So here, let me give you instructions. Make the newsletter for me and send it to me when it's ready. I look over it. It's not what I want. Then I give feedback. And I say, okay, cool. So here are the things that you did. When they're in HTML blocks, it reduces the deliverability of an email. When you do this, it reduces the delivery of an email. So on and so forth. Now, do all of those things and let me know when you're done. It comes back. It's not what I want. Means I have to do it again. And I have to keep doing it until there is absolute proof that she is unable to do it, or I am unable to communicate how it can be done. And now we have a newsletter. Because it definitely wasn't her. There are some people who just can't do the job. But there is a overarching skill that a leader has to develop that's so much more important than whether or not a person can do the job, that you have to almost just let go of that concept for a little while. And you have to start thinking, how can I make magic with the color palette that is available to me? This is how a leader should be thinking, is I have a color palette of humans. These are the humans that I have available to me. Maybe some of them volunteered, maybe some of them are employees, maybe these are collaborators. Whoever they are, these are the humans that are available to me. What talents do they have? Now, what magic can I create with those talents? I'm talking about it this way because this is very, very different from I have a vision and I want this person to make this vision come true. I have a vision and I want this person to make it come true is so challenging because you have an image that is flawless in your head that you cannot communicate flawlessly, that they then cannot act upon flawlessly, that could never be created flawlessly. And so you will always be discontent if that's your path to execution. But if instead you go, okay, here are the humans with these capabilities. Let me see if I can get them to do some cool things. And then you get them to do cool things, and then you look at it and you go, I like that. I want more of that. Then you can start to create magic. And so I'm super familiar with this. This is actually tied to like a classic artistic challenge, which is we imagine things in our head and then we want to create them in the real world. But the problem is you can imagine things in your head, if you're an artist, that can't even exist in the real world. They're not, like, it's not even possible. And so musicians will imagine a synthesizer sound that they've never heard before and then go out and try to, manipulate a synth until they get it to sound like the thing that's in their head. But it's possible, you just can't do it because you imagined a thing that was like half sound and half the color yellow. Right? Like you just imagined this crazy amalgamation of stuff in your head and you thought, wow, that's amazing. I want to see that in real life. but you didn't even realize that the human brain like imagines across multiple senses. And so like you might be an amazing musician, but like you just can't make the thing that was in your head. It's not real. It's not possible. And so musicians commonly struggle with the same thing that entrepreneurs do, even inside of their own minds and bodies. Meaning, they imagine a thing that they want to create, and then they try to get their hands to do it. And then they go, these stupid hands, I gotta fire these hands. Right? Like, I can never work with these hands. I can't work in an environment like this. These hands, somebody else is gonna have to apply for the job of having these hands. Like, this is not working. Right? Artists do this all the time, where they have a thing in their head, they want to create it, and they can't create it, and they get so frustrated because there's a thing that's perfect here and there's a thing that's imperfect over here. And when you're working with somebody else, this is basically the exact same thing 10x'd. But it's fascinating that artists and entrepreneurs deal with the same thing. Artists deal with it inside of their own minds and bodies first, where they conceptualize so perfectly, and then they try to execute, and the thing is imperfect, and they're done. And so the way an artist gets through this, there is a way out, is you have to let go of the idea of ideation execution and switch to, I am going to experiment, I'm going to execute first, and then I'm going to see what is good, and then I'm going to create based on what is good. And so now, instead of everything you create is a disappointment to the thing that was in your head, now everything you create is a happy accident compared to what was in your head. Artists have no idea how freeing it is to actually start with nothing. They often start with nothing in the sense of a blank page, no notes on the page, but they have all these expectations up here. If they actually get rid of the expectations up here and they start making things and then deciding whether or not they like them, suddenly they get to a place of incredible creativity. And then when do you start working with other people? When you start expanding your artwork, when you become an entrepreneur, you do the same thing, which is you stop thinking, I have an idea and it needs to be just like this idea. And how do I make that occur in real life? You start thinking, well, I have somebody that's really good at math. I have somebody who's really good at building stuff. I have somebody that's really good at marketing. What would happen if I got this math person to talk to this marketing person, and then for them to make this like interesting math facts as the marketing thing for this thing that this person is building? And I just came up with that randomly, but that could totally be a winning strategy. That could really succeed if you had somebody that was really good at math and really good at marketing and they got along well and it was a good match. But if I had the idea, oh my God, I want to create this marketing strategy that combines like math and cool videos, and let me go find 2 employees to like combine math with cool videos, it's going to be a slog. It's going to be exhausting because I'm going to be like, no, like they could look this way. That could be really cool. And I kind of wanted it different, right? But if the people that I'm working with are those people, and I decide, oh, that would work best based on their talents, now all of a sudden it's just happening. It's just cool. And it's like, oh, you know what? This works. I like this. Let's go with that. And so it's about playing to your strengths instead of building your strengths up. It's about playing to your strengths instead of building up your weaknesses. That's kind of like fundamentally what's going on. And then the other concept is like, instead of being trying to create a perfect vision and then make it real in the world. It's about starting with less in here and examining what is out here. And it doesn't mean you can't ideate. It doesn't mean you can't come up with ideas. It's just that most artists and most entrepreneurs weight this too heavily. They emphasize what's in their mind too much, and they're unwilling to have the happy magic that is real creativity. You can have a vision and you can like beat people up to get to that vision, but they'll walk away. I'm not saying you can't make your vision come true. I'm saying the path to getting your creative vision to come true happens through your increased capacity to create. It's not about getting a specific thing through your creative process. It's about increasing your capacity to create as a whole. And so if you're a perfectionist and you're constantly beating up on the people around you, trying to get them to make the thing just the way you want them to make it, and your people are leaving you and your progress is slow, and like every once in a while you're creating a thing that you want, but it's getting more and more sluggish and less rewarding, then your overall capacity to create is reducing. And so instead, if you flip it to go, okay, like what could we make that's good? And you start just tapping into the things that people can do and, and puzzle piecing them together until they turn into good things, then your capacity to create increases. And therefore, also your capacity to create the thing that's the vision in your mind also increases. And so the way to create the perfect thing that's in your mind is actually to be less attached to it and to focus more on the capacity to create as a whole, making good things as a whole, and then slowly making those things that you're really committed to over time. Because we all have our dream projects. We all have like these things that we want to sound just a certain way. We all have the businesses where like we want to offer this exact specific product because it would be so cool. And the problem is we think we can do that at the beginning, and we just can't. One of my favorite examples of this is Joss Whedon. So Joss Whedon, incredible film director, he did Buffy the Vampire Slayer and he did The Avengers. And I love these two examples, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The Avengers, because Buffy the Vampire Slayer is this like campy TV show where you can, see, she's slaying vampires with sticks that look like tent stakes, and you can practically see the zippers on the back of the costumes. It's low budget, it's silly. And then Avengers, when Avengers was produced, it was essentially like the best of the best that could be produced technologically speaking at that time. And what I like to say is Joss Whedon was able to create the Avengers because of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And the way they produced Buffy the Vampire Slayer was, well, an episode needed to keep coming out every week. And so, we got to slap together the script. We've got to make sure that everything's working. We don't have exactly the right props for this. Well, let's make do. Let's make something else work. Because we just want to make the thing. How could we just make the thing? Oh, that looks neat. Send it. Let's go. And what that did was it increased his capacity to create. So much so that when it came time to make the Avengers, he could. And it probably didn't even stress him as much as, many epic movies for many people have been stressed by. Because he was so used to producing, don't get me wrong, I'm sure it was a stressful experience. But he had so much capacity that it was within his capacity. And you will see over and over, the greats of the world are people who produce massive quantities of things. Mozart's symphonies that are famous are like the 3 symphonies of 40. A symphony is an hour long. He was writing hour-long pieces of music that nobody listens to. because they all listen to the 3 symphonies that are the famous ones, right? It's the same with Beethoven. It's the same with, like any of the great creatives of the world. And it's the same with the entrepreneurs. Most of the entrepreneurs that create great things, 90% of what they've created is ignored. It does not go down in history. It is not considered great. But because they produced with greatness and they optimized for what they could make, they became better at making things. And so this comes down to a fundamental thing that I like to talk about a lot, which is it is not quantity versus quality. It is quantity enables quality. And so if you start to optimize for what you can make, then you will become capable of making better. So it's a long rant for this one, but I think this is probably helpful to a lot of people. I know it's helpful to me in a lot of places still. Half the time when I'm struggling in business, this is the thing that actually stops me, is I'm busy obsessing about how perfect something needs to be, and I'm not looking at what could be. There are ways to make nice pieces. If you lower the requirements of perfection and you lower the requirements of epicness, you can start making nice pieces now. We constantly are like, I got to release the best course. I've got to release the best product. I've got to release the best album. And when you do that, it just messes with your brain. And so if you, again, optimize for nice things, where you go, oh, I just want to make something that sounds good. I just want to provide a product that's kind of useful. I just want to be helpful. All of a sudden, that's within your capacity. That's doable. If you optimize for what is possible over what you are attached to, you become capable of action. If you'd like to turn your life around, to build a business, build an audience, and build your life, then go to the link below or go to apply.joshterryplays.com.